Hi, I'm Marjorie Healy, and welcome to another episode of Behind the White Picket Fence, where life is both messy and beautiful. Today, I have my sister on with me, so this will be a real treat for our listeners because they're going to get to know me through the eyes of my sister. And I'm sure I was a great sister to grow up with, and she'll have nothing but lovely things to say about me. Oh, I don't have your voice. I can't hear you.
I said it quietly.
Oh, you said
Sorry, I
it.
didn't want to interrupt you.
That's okay. You can interrupt me. I know one of the things about doing a podcast and talking back and forth is that we have to interrupt each other delicately, but you can interrupt me. And
That was
probably,
me being sarcastic, of course.
oh, yeah. Well, and for everyone who knows me really well, I need to be interrupted because I love to talk. So you can interrupt me anytime you want. But I'm really excited to have you on, and I've been wanting to do this for a while because I think that I am the most myself when I'm with you. I I think that I'm the most relaxed. I'm the most real, honest, and to my own self be true way is when I'm with you because you give me the space to do that. And I have a few other friends who do that for me too, but the list is short. There's not a lot of people that you're around that give you that space. So I'm excited to have you on because I think my listeners will get a little glimpse into the most raw version of me that I think they miss out on because I obviously when I'm working, I'm very diplomatic and I'm very conscious of how I'm guiding them and I'm probably very put together.
Right. Picket fence. Put
Yeah,
together.
well,
Yeah.
a little bit, right? And that's the opposite of what I'm trying to do here. I'm like, let's get behind the white picket fence.
Well, yeah. Yeah. I would start with like, don't ever be fooled by the facade, right? Like, um, we're here, we put makeup on this morning, but like, that's it.
Yeah, totally.
we're real, we're raw. There's no more to it than a little bit of lipstick, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's true. It's like there's a very thin layer of foundation on, and you can definitely get past it with me.
Look, the gate's open on that fence. Let's
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. And I
So where
think,
do you want to start?
oh gosh, yeah. Okay. Well, let's start with, what was it like growing up with me?
Uh,
Sister?
okay. So fun for sure. I got to start off with that one. We were a team, right? As it was our brother and the girls. We were a unit from that perspective. So that was good. I know we bickered a lot, and I think ultimately that comes down to our similarities and sharing space and those kinds of things. But I like that migrated right from childhood into adolescence, and then as adults, like that level of friendship never changed
No.
through that at all, right? Regardless of the fact that the bickering waned entirely
Right.
and is gone. But yeah, so I'd say those are the things that like pop up first, right? That we were a team and always have been and
Yeah,
probably always will be.
we will. And we shared a room
Yeah,
for the first 15 years.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
before we moved to a bigger
A
house.
little room.
A little room, right? With two twin beds in it. You're right, we did. And it's funny you say that because I think we did bicker quite a bit and it probably drove our mom insane
Oh, I'm sure it did.
to listen to us argue,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. But it's interesting how you say it changed over time because I don't know about for you, but you're older than I am, not by a lot, by 15 months. We're very close
Yeah.
together in age. But when you left for university was probably my realization of how much I missed you and how much time we spent together. And it was all of a sudden you left the house and you were gone and I was home all by myself and it felt so weird. And I think it was the first time I learned to appreciate, to look past the bickering and the kind of, who's took whose clothes and, who's wearing what and who's left the room messier or whatever it was. And really move into appreciation for our relationship as sisters.
So for me, oddly enough, your first year of university. And the reason I say that is because it through my first year, you were available to me when I wanted you. but I was otherwise busy, right? Like life was busy. When you started your first year, I no longer had access to you when
Right.
I needed you because you
Right.
were busy doing all those things.
Being
And
really
that was
social.
probably that, yes. But that was the first time when I sort of got to that place where I was like, oh, like I can't just have access to you whenever I need you because you're having your own life now, right? Um,
Right.
yeah. So that
Yeah,
would be
a really
the
full busy
first.
life. It was no secret, and I don't keep this a secret, but I almost failed out of my first year of university. I did.
Yes. I swear I tried to talk you out of an 8 a.m. class and she wouldn't
I don't think,
wouldn't believe me that that was a bad idea. Yeah, but
yeah,
making journalism first thing,
I
not
know.
gonna happen.
I
Yeah.
know. I'm funny I didn't go down the journalism route. I just took that as a class I thought I'd be interested in, and I think I slept through it most of the
Yes.
time and never made it. Right. I know
Tough.
I learned a lot of harsh lessons in first year, but I wasn't available to you. I know I wasn't because I was so busy having the time of my life and being really social.
Yeah. So
Right.
that's that first time that I felt that absence in the way that you did when I first left, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I know, and I think we've just grown from there, even though we're really different. What do you think are our differences? Like if you were to describe that, what would it be?
Okay, so right off the top, I would say you're more fun. I love fun. Don't
Right.
get me wrong. I'm a total joiner, but you make fun. And
Oh,
that's a talent that you have that I don't have. And I think that's like pervasive through our lives. But if you ask my kids who's more fun, they're like, Auntie M's more fun for sure. Any day of the week. So I'd say that's a major difference. Places where we're similar, I'd say in values.
oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, right. That family and that focus being so important is there. Um, Understanding how you are in this world and how you're connected to other people, and
Right.
that connection is so important. And value of that. I think those are places that you and I are very, very similar and get along as a
Yeah.
result easily.
Right. It's true, right? I think that's actually a really nice way to put it, that our values are the same. And we look at relationships and marriages and things like that. We say, what is it that keeps people together? And it's that they share a value system, that they both believe in the same things, and those same things are important to them. And then through that they can be different, but they can
Yeah.
come. I think one of our differences is that you've always been the smart sister, right? If you were to look.
Okay. Okay, I was gonna say sure through school, I had an easier time through school. I don't
Right.
know as we've gotten older that still shakes out that way, but I'm not
Well,
sure exactly how you measure it anyway.
yeah, it's very difficult to measure. Right. It's true, right? And in some ways I internalized that I wasn't smart because the school system failed me in many ways. I didn't fit into the box of academics the same way. I didn't learn the same way. And so I think for a long time I interpreted that as not being smart. But if you were to kind of look back on our early lives, you were very cerebral, you were very book smart, you knew how to get into a classroom, how to pay attention, how to take notes, how to study for a test, and you worked really hard. None of it came easy. Not
Yeah,
easy.
no,
You put
not
in
getting grades just because. Yeah, I wish.
yeah, it wasn't like you just had this naturally gifted talent. I
No.
remember you working very hard.
Yeah,
And
it was a system, right? Like it's a system and you figured out how to make that work for you to succeed at that system. And some people have an easier time working within that framework than other people do, right? And that was something I could do
yeah,
relatively easily. Yeah.
yeah, you fell into that systems and you were able to
Yeah.
make it work for yourself. Whereas I not so much. So I was sort of like we sort of fell into separate camps. But I actually I think I grew my emotional intelligence then during that
Yes.
time because I wasn't able to fit the mold of academics the same way. And I think that actually grew my compassion and my understanding for humanity in a different way. I started to become more street smart versus book smart. And that's a very unfair way to say it because I think that really categorizes us and probably people have very clear conceptual views of what that might look like. So I say that loosely, but I started to become emotionally aware versus maybe, those bold black terms in textbooks became less.
Yeah, I wonder if it's that because you didn't find the same level of success in the school system, you put a focus in other places where you
Right.
did find success. And a lot of that, if I'm looking back now, I'd say into friendships that you
Right.
had. And I'd say that's probably been a consistent theme through your life, that you are, as you say, as a result of probably some of that emotional intelligence, have a way of connecting with a lot of people in a lot of ways that
Right.
is typically pretty meaningful. And I would suggest that's probably because you're like, okay, well, I gotta spend all day at school, but the other thing I can do while I'm here is hang out with people that I like, right? So
It's true.
yeah.
I mean, I do, without changing and going into a completely different topic, but I do have to recharge from that. But I find my friendships are incredibly meaningful to me, and I do deeply care about people, and
Yeah,
I deeply care about the human experience. I think
yeah,
the human
absolutely.
is really raw. And one of the things I've always told people, and kind of the reason I named this podcast Behind the White Picket Fence, is that I don't care what you've done, or where you think you've made mistakes, or where you think you've been immoral, so to speak, or lost track of your value system, or any of that. I don't care. I will meet you wherever you are. And I have compassion for that. Where I lose it, like I think where I lose compassion is when someone wants to justify their life decisions or choices and try to make it something it's not. I'm really, really great when people say to me, you know what, I made a mistake and I'm hurting, or I'm suffering, or I'm worried. When they get really vulnerable about all that, I have so much room, like an incredible amount of room for you. And so that's just being the way I am. When it
Yeah.
gets fake, or when I see people trying to justify their way out of their behaviors, then I really struggle. I can't.
So I have a couple of comments on that. One, and probably one difference between the two of us, you're way more empathetic than I am.
Yeah.
And I think that feeds into that level of compassion. Don't get me wrong, I have empathy, but I need somebody to tell me what it's like to be where they are before I can feel that for them.
Right.
You can stretch your imagination better than I can to understand what that might even possibly feel like or look like,
Right.
which gives you a much longer road to work with
Mhm.
them. That's one. The other, I think, while lots of people will say that you talk a lot, I think it's absolutely true.
I love talking. Yes.
The most fun actually has been seeing in adulthood the way that you listen, because I think those are in equal balance at this point. And so if anybody considers you an effective talker, they have to consider you an effective listener. And when you say things like, I'm I'm picking up on or hearing people say things that are in are malaligned with who they've told me they are, I think that's really key, right? Because it's not just in this particular conversation, but in all the conversations that you've had with them, you are going down that road and extrapolating and hearing who they are. And then when you hear something later that doesn't quite line up with that, like all of that information gets like encased for
Yeah.
you in
Yeah.
this. And so it makes you very insightful in
Yeah.
those conversations, because you're like, hold up a second, right?
Yeah.
Something's not,
Let the
it's not
train back
working.
in the station. Yes. Well, I think I might be an empathetic detective, in that I'm always listening. You're right. It's funny for someone who talks as much as I do. I am actively listening all the time and watching. I think there was, like, it's a whole other podcast, but parents kind of get flustered when their kids aren't participators, and, they'll pay for an activity and they'll bring their child, and their child sits and says, I'm not doing that. And the parents like, I paid for this, get in there. And I always say, well, observation is a form of participation. And so one of the things that I do is I observe and I listen, and I'm looking for pattern, and I'm looking, you're right. When I'm with a client, I am on, and my detective brain is on. Not that I'm trying to manipulate a question. I ask everything from a place of curiosity. I'm always say, help me understand. I want to understand you. So everything I'm asking is for me to grow that understanding, but it's also to try to figure out, okay, well, where are your patterns and where are they not serving you? And where are they showing up? And for most of us, like, we hear this all the time. Darn it, like I'm learning this life lesson again. Like
Yeah.
patterns are ingrained.
Yeah.
They keep coming back until you really are ready to tackle them and be ready for something different, right? Okay, so what, I think, well, oh, let me ask you this. I think there's one thing that we've really grown in our relationship, and I'm curious to know your thoughts on it, is that often when we would talk, you would say to me, you would want to show it me if the other person's side. If I wanted to tell you about a situation I had or a conflict I'd had, you would say, well, maybe we should look at it from their side. And one of, I think, the biggest places we've grown as sisters is there's been a psychological, trick to listening and supporting people. And one of them is that not to show them all the time from the other side, or not to want to fix, because you are really good at solution based. Well, I might be a pattern detective. You are, show me your problem, I will show you the solution, I will map it out. There's always an answer, there's always a way. But from an emotional sister connective relationship, I'm like, I'm not looking for a solution. And I would phone you and say, and you're all gonna have to pardon my French, I'd be wanting to tell you about a conflict I'd had with a friend, and I'd say, okay, we're just gonna both agree she's starts with a B, right? She's a this. And before I'd even have told you the situation.
Yeah.
And I guess my very long question is that, do you remember that shift in our relationship and how much I think that has brought us closer together? That I just wanted you to listen and understand.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's true. I am absolutely a solution finder as opposed to a problem identifier. And it's because I don't like being stuck, right? I always want to move forward with something. And so I'm absolutely bent that way. And so starting the conversation with, okay, I'm going to tell you about this, but I just need you to listen. It is like, it's blatant, but it was the cue, right? And yes, to support the people that you love, yeah, you can do that. You don't need to give them the answer. Sometimes you just need to hear them out. Sometimes they'll talk it out on their own without you really even having to do much. And sometimes just being able to say, yeah, hey, you know what, that sucks.
Yeah.
Is all they really need in that moment, right?
Yeah, they just
you
need
have to- like you just need the space to, and I've been there too, right? And I've said the same thing, whether I'm talking to you or my husband. It's like, look, I just need you to hear me. This is how I'm feeling, right?
Right. I don't need you to solve it, and I don't want to know the person's other side. I already know it.
Yeah.
Like the truth is that we often already know it. And I think one of the things that I've learned through all that relationship building while I wasn't having as much success academically was what people needed. And not only what other people needed, learning how to tell people what I needed, learning to come up and show up in my relationships and say, and you're my closest relationship out of all. I have a ton of friends and I love them all. And maybe some of them will be sad to hear this, or I think a lot of them are quite jealous of our relationship, or they look at our relationship and they say, oh my
We're
God,
pretty lucky.
we're really lucky. Yes, I hear this all the time, but you're my closest relationship. And I've learned even in all of them, but through ours, is to say what it is that I need, and to know that, well, at times I was good at assessing what other people's needs are. Not everyone can always assess what mine are, and they're not magicians. No one's a magician. And learning to show up in all of my relationships and say, this is what I need from you. Right?
Yeah.
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 It's true. Like just being able to ask for it.
Yeah.
It's true.
I imagine in your role, that's kind of an interesting place. I don't know if you ever ask your clients, like,
Mm.
did they know what they need when
Mhm.
they're first talking to you? Do you find that you have to kind of figure that out as
Mhm.
you go, temperature read, kind of
Right.
as you do that, right? Imagine that's a bit of a tricky place to navigate. Right?
Yeah, a little bit. And we should actually talk about this. It's a perfect segue because you're my sister and we talk all the time,
Yes.
a lot, especially when the
Free
pandemic
parent coaching. Yes.
free
Yes.
parent coaching. But
On demand, I'd like to point out also, right? Because like I don't book time with you. I just call you when I'm in that space.
right?
When
Forget
I'm like,
about
I can't deal. Help me out. Yeah.
yeah, drop everything. I need you. Well, and I think it's different. The coaching that I've done with you is different than I do with my clients because my clients, the way I like in my coaching with clients is that they show up and I am going to take them into some, hard waters at times because their children are forcing them to look at their own behavior and their own patterns and how they're showing up for these little humans that they have. And as we both know, it's exhausting. So I liken it to teaching swimming. When I taught swimming, I would develop a relationship with a very scared 3-year-old, for example. And the 3-year-old has never gone underwater, is terrified of the water, and their parents desperately want this child to learn to swim. And now this child's in my care. So I would develop a relationship with them and I would slowly get to know them. And we would just play in the water until our relationship was as solid as I thought it needed to be for me to take this child underwater for the first time.
Right.
And we were going to go together, by the way. Like I never took a child underwater alone. So as I'm telling the story, I even
It's a
realized
great analogy.
it's
It
true.
really is.
And I realize even now how far back I was in my relationship building because I was 15 when I started teaching swimming. And there are a lot of people are afraid of the water, right? And parenting's the same. You are in the deep end when you have
Yes.
children, and it can feel like you're drowning. So as I developed this relationship with this scared child, at one point I take us underwater and I know one of two things are going to happen. The child will be okay. And it worked. And I picked my timing properly. Like I had to time it right. Or
Yeah.
the child had a bad experience, but our relationship was strong enough to weather that storm.
Right.
So either outcome, I knew I was going to be okay. And when I took them underwater is a little bit of a well-educated guess. It's that we are close enough, I think, that I can do this. So I take my clients very carefully to the deep end, but I don't think I always took you very carefully to the deep end. I think I pulled you just like I was like, whoosh, we're going underwater.
Well, I would expect that a little bit because there isn't, um, if I'm going to use your analogy here for a minute, essentially through the first part of that relationship, what you're doing is building a level of trust.
Right.
That's what that is. And when we are talking in these scenarios, that level of trust is already there. It's been built up over years and years.
Absolutely.
So there isn't a need to take me as delicately to that water, because I know already that implicitly I trust you, right? So you can kind of yank me along and be like, here's where we need to get to. And it doesn't require the same level of like kid gloves, if you will, to do that. So, for sure.
I think too, because when my friends come to me for kind of help and I don't give advice, and I know that's a really tough thing for people to understand. The coaching relationship is not about me telling you what to do. It's about us working shoulder to shoulder through whatever it is you're going through, and me helping you become aware that, in the end, like you said, 99% of the time you solve your own problems, because you are able to see it as I illuminate it, right? Like, you're so in it, you can't see what's going on, but as you talk it through, I can start to shine a light on where the patterns are, and then it's like, oh my gosh, well, how come I didn't see that? And it's because you're so in it, it's hard to see, right? But I guess what I'm trying to also say is that when my friends come, a hard part for me is that I care about them at a little bit of a different level. I'm more invested because I've known them for a very long time. I already know what they're going through. Typically, I already know their pattern just by nature of being their friend. And I'm not doing it on purpose. You can see your friend's patterns more easily.
Sure.
You even see your own.
Yeah.
And so I sometimes rush my friends. I'm like, oh, well, I don't have the time to take you through the proper kind of discovery work I do with a client. So if we're just going to band-aid this solution, let me just tell you what it is. Let me just quickly save you. Let me just quickly give you some advice that will, through my own experience, that will hopefully quickly save you. So it's really different, and it's hard to explain how different that is, right?
Yeah.
I'm not working when I'm with you.
No.
Right?
No. It's an interesting mixture, because you're essentially being my sister first in every interaction, right?
Right. Yeah, I've had some friends turn into clients, and I think they would all agree that it is a completely different experience to be my friend than it is to be my client. Like, those who thought they were getting free, they're like, I work for free. I'm like, well, you're not really. It's a much deeper dive when you become my client, right?
No. Yeah.
We get to go way deeper because I'm sitting in a focused space. I'm actually there to do a job that I take very seriously, and I will take way more time to really research those patterns and to garner a much deeper understanding from the client as to what they're going through. And then I can truly coach them. But if I'm just walking in the forest with them or just on the phone with you, it is different, right? Okay, so tell me this. Let's talk a little bit about what motherhood's been like for you and for us as sisters, because I think as much as you're the call, like, I'm going crazy, I equally phone you and say, I'm going crazy, because that is the truth. This motherhood can drive crazy, or some say to the brink of insanity, and I say, no, I'll never forget when my kids were little and we were at our summer cabin and there was freaking toys all over the floor, and one of them was Buzz Lightyear, and I stepped on Buzz Lightyear and he said, to infinity and beyond. And I said, Buzz, I hear you. Like, you and I right now are
Let's
one.
go.
Yeah, like, just take me somewhere else. I am going to lose my mind. And I even think the other day we were on FaceTime call and I had received an email from Shaw saying, how was your conversation with us? And I didn't have a conversation with Shaw. And I knew it was my son who had very lovely broke into my Shaw password to try to
Yeah.
fix his internet for his gaming. And I said to you, I am going to kill that kid. And yet I can't, because it's not good for my brand. But we have these moments. Yeah, the parent coach kills her. Yeah, we can't do that. But
No.
But I have those parental moments of frustrations, and we both call each other, and we both have gotten, or been able to share in the journey of motherhood together. But maybe for my listeners' sake, what has motherhood been like for you?
So good question. I don't know that I have anything sort of new to provide in this space. I think others have kind of said similar.
Right.
But like absolutely the two ends of the spectrum are greatest joys, and absolutely highest levels of frustration. Like I can't describe
Yeah.
the depths of that. Yeah, there have been several conversations in my household about getting perhaps admitting myself to the loony bin.
Right.
Um, More so of anything, just through repetition of things that you think should be fairly straightforward are just not. Um, and that you are, kids are relentless, and that shows up. So when we're talking about the messiness of life, that relentlessness is absolutely coming out. We're talking about the joys in this. Oh, that I mean, those moments are phenomenal. They can be snippets of life that are happening kind of in the backyard, or seeing your kids playing with their friends out in the street, to watching them graduate,
Oh,
getting their first jobs, and seeing some successes.
right.
The pride, uh, can't tell you the pride I felt when I actually visited a place of work for one of my kids, and had 4 different people that work there come up to me and tell me how great she was.
Right.
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
seeing them grow into these like people who are gonna come in and contribute, um, and understanding that you helped to get them there. I mean, look, they're their own individuals, and so in the same vein of being like awesome at this part and being totally relentless at this part, they are still my human being.
Yes.
But yeah, I'd say
Yes.
that's kind of my like
Yes. I'm
experience
I'm
in a
kind of
nutshell.
crying listening. I don't think we've really talked about pride before. I think this is the first conversation I've had about how proud we are of our kids, and
Oh God, yeah.
it's so beautiful. I think that, for all those moments of, oh my gosh, could you please just put your dishes in the dishwasher? Like, how hard could this be? Do not stack them in the sink. Just rinse dishwasher. And you feel like you've had that conversation a million times, and yet I will go and watch my kids play hockey. And we've actually joked about this over and over and over again, because my kids have played hockey with such heart. They have gone on the ice, and regardless of skill set, I can promise you the one thing that's the steady is their love for the sport.
Yeah, all in.
And seeing them do that, and I've always said, when I see them have a success or see them play with that passion, all I want to do is do a penguin slide at center ice after, and just be like, that's my babies. And there's a few jokes waiting for that impending penguin slide. And as you know, my last one has a couple more years in minor hockey, but I really think I'm going to have to get out there in my very big puffy jacket and do the penguin slide, because I have so much pride on their behalf. I'm so proud of my children, and for all the kind of bumps and bruises along the way. I think, there's nothing like seeing your child be successful in every definition, not,
Anything.
anything.
It doesn't matter what it is. But seeing them succeed, and yeah, it's so hard to, you always want to help them in every way, but at the end of the day, especially in places where they've kind of gone and done it themselves, um, one of the things I'd say that a value maybe that we share is that love of sport,
Right.
and making sure that our kids were, given an opportunity or opportunities to participate and be a part of that, and understand how fun, and healthy and just good being in that it is. And
Right.
so when I see them out there playing, in a way, it doesn't always matter if they're winning or losing. If they're out there doing it, and as you say, with all like full heart, right? Trying their hardest, even if they're down, nothing. Doesn't it like it
Doesn't
doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
That's the win for me. I'm like, yeah, like,
Yes.
they're trying hard and participating as a team.
Right.
That's
I
fun.
think one of the things that's tricky in parenting is that our kids are hardest on us because we're their safest place. So they are going to show us, their messiest version of themselves, and they feel like they can have every emotion in front of us, which, while difficult for us as their witness and as their parent, and probably one of the hardest invitations is to just be their witness in that moment and not to join them on through all of their emotions. But because of that, we take some hits. We get, they come home from school and we're their safe space, so they let it all out, and sometimes even take it out on us
Yeah.
as a parent. And then we don't, in turn, we then get to go watch them do something amazing. And because when they're outside of our house, they're their best self. You hear this, like they'll go to a friend's house, and a mom will say, "Oh, your child was so well behaved. They had incredible manners, and they moved their shoes inside at the door, and they
Yeah.
took their dishes from their snack into the kitchen." And you're thinking, "Oh my gosh," and they definitely were, emotionally, pleasant, and hello and how are you, and they hold a conversation with that other parent, and you're thinking, what is going on?
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because in a way, I wonder if we haven't taught them
Right.
that,
Right.
right? Like that there are ways that we behave in our own home, and then there's ways that we behave in other people's homes.
Absolutely.
And that's if I look back at it, like I probably set that pattern
For
pretty
sure.
well.
For sure.
I'd be hard pressed to say that I haven't also done the same thing, come home from work or wherever, and this is my safe space too. So I would have to, fess up and be honest that I have probably taken my frustrations out on the people that I love the most. And that's like, it's awful. It's not how, I want the inverse to be true.
Well,
uh,
you know what I think?
these are,
Well, I don't know. I think that we can't run around the world and just be vomiting our emotions all over the place. I
oh,
think
for sure.
I
So
think
you have to self-regulate.
you have.
Absolutely.
But if you're going to dysregulate, at home is the best place to do it. And our kids have seen, as much as I've seen them dysregulate, they've seen me dysregulate too. And I think that growing that awareness of when you've dysregulated, and then coming
Yeah.
back to neutral, and then doing that repair that you have to do. Because if I'm going to show them a dysregulated version of myself, then I'm also going to show them what I do afterwards. That, if I
Yeah. And how I want to manage that, right? And so in our house, we've tried our best to say, okay, if you recognize or get pointed out that you're in that space, then you self-isolate,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
COVID language here, but yeah, basically go find some space on your own, right?
yeah,
Because
go find some
sort of
space.
like if I have a headache, the rest of the household doesn't need to take a Tylenol. I do, right?
That's right.
So
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it's what can I do for you while you're feeling so out of sorts? Is there something I can do? And maybe, sometimes that's come sit with me, but a lot of times people just do want to be on their own
yeah.
to work through it. But yeah, just help pointing out that they're dysregulated, and I know no one likes to hear that. And if, I've always said, be really clear with your boundaries too. If your child's hurting you during a dysregulation of themselves, it's okay to take yourself to a safe place. And that can get really controversial, because some people might say, oh my gosh, never leave, or never, but
Right.
I have some boundaries around, especially when they're little, having tantrums like the hitting, the biting, the hair pulling, all of that. If my child's having a big emotional experience, that I don't need to be, if they're hurting me, I can be close by, but not in a space where I could be hurt by them. So, that's a whole, I mean, we would need 2 hours, but it's another good option for a podcast for sure, to do that on dysregulation in the household. Okay, so wow, we kind of went deeper than I thought on a lot of topics, but I loved. But I kind of want to end in a fun way. I'm trying to think the
Yeah.
best way. And I want to share maybe a story of an adventure we did together.
Oh, good. Absolutely. I
I,
think adventure is probably one thing that people should know about you, it's the lens through which you view life. It is one big adventure.
it is.
So if, I just think it would be an interesting thing for your clients to understand about you, because it's like partly where that curiosity comes from. It's where the listening and compassion comes from. It's like you want to understand this because like this is the stuff, right? And getting from where you are to the other side is like that. Oh, what's that book? The Going on a Bear Hunt, right? Can't go under it, can't go around it, can't go over it. You got to go through it.
Okay, I have shivers because I was just last week talking about this story, and I have
Okay.
two books in my house. I have Alexander Had a Horrible, Terrible, No Good, Very Bad.
Very bad day. Yes. Yes.
And that book is so great
Yep.
because sometimes we have horrible, terrible, no good, very bad days. And our moms all said there were days like that, even in Australia. That's the last line of
Yes.
the book, right?
Even in Australia.
Even in
Right.
Australia.
Yeah.
And then the other book that I brought up this week was Going on a Bear Hunt, because life is a little bit like that. And it's
Yeah.
true. I have a huge heart for adventure. I think adventure is where it's at. And if you know me, no matter how hard or messy life gets, and mine has, and then, as my listeners might not know already, but I've gone through a terrible divorce, and it got hard, and it is hard. And I really faced a lot of challenges. And that book to me, while kids don't know it while you're reading it to them as little kids, it is a metaphor for all of life. It's, we're going on a bear hunt and they come up against, I think a giant swamp, and it's like, we can't go under it. We can't go over it. We have to go through it. And it's the going through it where you learn everything you've ever wanted to know about yourself and more.
Yep. Absolutely.
So I think you're right. I think I probably even didn't realize my propensity to have adventures is probably also lined up with how much I want to learn about myself through those adventures.
Yeah.
And I think with you, because I feel so safe, I get to not only be on an adventure, I get to be on an adventure with someone that I feel the most comfortable with, and therefore get to be the most myself. So yeah, I mean, there's two stories that highlight that. I think once we were skiing in Whistler together, and do you remember we got on the chair and I lit up a conversation with our stranger
With our
chair.
chairmate. Yes.
Yes, we had chairmates, and he was trying to decide whether he should bring his skis in and pay for them to get fixed up, or whether he should do it himself. And then we just dove right in, and we even got right down to, well, I don't know, what's your mortgage? Because if your mortgage is too high and you're I don't want you to spend money you don't have. And we laughed and laughed with these complete strangers.
We
And
did.
I said to you, we just both had this incredible conversation with two people that we probably will never meet again,
Yeah.
but that have forever, I think, both changed us, and that, that we
Yeah.
just had this great experience together in which we could celebrate a chairlift ride together. And that was okay. That's all it had to be, that they were going to go there,
Yeah.
we were going to go ours, and we'll always have that conversation and the laughter that came from that conversation.
Yep.
And in fairness, at other times, and people don't believe this about me, that I can be shy and that I'm not always as comfortable to do that. I'm
I think you are, and you do it anyway.
Yeah,
Do
that's
you know what
probably.
I mean? I think that's the difference. Again, kind of an interesting nuance for people to understand about you. Like you are just as nervous and uncertain as they are, probably even as they come to you as parents, right? Like we all live in that space.
Right,
Difference is that you hold the courage to do it anyway.
absolutely.
And that every time you do, I mean, honestly, the instigation of that conversation was really that, right? It was just you putting one little bit out there. It was like fishing. You dropped your line in the water and he bit. And boy, did we have a laugh as a result. Like it just pays back in dividends every time you do. But you are the one that just sort of says, I'm going to try, right? And it doesn't work all the time. You're going to get it. You're going to get somebody who's like, I'm not engaged.
Yes.
But when you do, it's often very fun.
It's so fun. I know. And it's taking those social risks a little bit that, you know, turn out that most of them pay off. I mean, once in a while you get a cool fish and they're not game. And, but you know, most of the time you find out that the people do have these huge hearts and we all are looking for that connection and we all want to have those great fun conversations, and they don't always have to be deep. They could just be those momentary, you know, times in our lives where we chat about something and we laugh. And as I said, we're never going to see those people again. And if I did, I wouldn't recognize them because we were all in our gear with helmets and toques, and you know, we would never recognize them, but it didn't matter. We just had this great thing. Okay, one last story. In 2019, I told you that I was going to go by myself. I said, I'm going to go on a road trip alone and I'm going to go hiking in the mountains in the States. And you said, that's crazy. And and maybe it was crazy, but I wanted to do it. And you said, well, I'm going to come with you. And I said, well, you better be ready for adventure. And I think it's fair to share this story because I didn't really want to plan the trip too much. I wanted to sort of get in the car. I knew about where we were going to go. And, you know, I just figured we'd figure it out along the way.
Yeah. I think I know where you're going here. Missoula?
Yeah. So we end up, yes, I'm going in the direction of Missoula. So I just want to warn other people and friends if they're going to come on a trip with me that this is possible. These things don't happen to them. So we end up on the open road on the I-90 and we are heading towards Montana, and we know that we're probably going to have to sleep somewhere in Montana that night. And I think you looked up about halfway into our road trip. Oh, okay, yeah, there's places we can stay and there's lots of availability and it's not going to be a problem. And as we got closer, some things shifted. I think there was a storm in Montana, a bunch of flights got canceled, and there was baseball tournaments going on.
Yeah.
And we found ourselves with nowhere to sleep. And
a bit of a Jesus moment, right?
Yes.
No room in the inn.
There was no room in any
nowhere to stay.
Yeah.
And by this point, just so people know, like the first option is like keep driving. We'd already been driving for about 11 hours.
At least.
We were done, and it was one of those.
And
one of those nights.
Change because I picked you up at the airport, and you were and we had stopped at numerous hotels to try, and I would have taken a broom closet. We were desperate, and so I Googled safe places to sleep in your car, and Walmart popped up. So you and I found ourselves in a Walmart parking lot, and we went into Walmart. And you remember I walked in, and it was a huge Walmart, but at that time of night, only one door was open to the Walmart, and multiple doors, and the door was to the produce section. And we walk in, and I said to you, oh my gosh, this is like a B&B, a bed and breakfast. We're going to sleep in the parking lot, and we're going to walk in and get a fresh orange in the morning. And we did. We spent, I think, $40 US, which is the cheapest I've ever spent on a night stay anywhere.
Yeah, what was it, like a little bit of a mattress pad, a pillow, and something, and we made camp in the back of the car as best we could, and I believe brushed our teeth in the bathroom at the Walmart.
No, I think we brushed them in the parking lot. Do you remember with bottled water? We brushed
oh my gosh. Yeah.
And we And in the mornings, we slept in the back of my car, and in the morning, I popped the trunk, and there was a view of the mountains. We had a gorgeous mountain view.
Yeah,
And I made a photo album of our book, and I keep it in my room, and I look at it all the time. And
that was a great trip.
it was a great trip. And on the very first page of the photo album book, it's written, "You said you wanted adventure," and that I sure gave you adventure. We had multiple adventures on
Well,
that trip.
between that and almost running into a bear,
Yeah,
yeah,
a close
yeah,
bear call, and
was-
we did a major descent that we weren't planning on doing, and a hike that we were on, and there was lots of different adventures. I just want to say that I am so lucky, blessed, and grateful for you in my life. And I think at one point when we were planning this call, you said, "Oh, I need to be careful not to take advantage of your free advice." But I've always said I need to be careful not to take advantage of your incredible kindness and all the things that you've always been willing to do for me, which is unbelievable. And we would be here all day if I listed
yeah.
all the things you do to support me as your sister.
Partner in crime. That's all I can say.
100%. I know. And we are going to support you, but we will definitely get back on here again because we have a lot of funny stories that I think are applicable to life and motherhood and would probably keep you laughing for days. We'll tease our audience, but we did commit a small crime together then. And I don't know if we're allowed to talk about it. If we talk about it, if I get arrested for the crime, I don't know.
Evidence might be biodegraded by
I
now.
think the evidence is probably biodegraded by now, but we will share our crime story. And
Sounds worse than it is.
it does. It sounds way worse than it is. The word "small" is very important here. I am a law-abiding citizen, and I don't. But I strayed too far from the law, but it was sure funny, and I'm certainly glad to do it with you. And I honestly, you're my first call if I'm ever in trouble, and I am really beyond blessed to have you as a sister. So thank
Back at
you
you.
for coming on. I think people have probably got to know me a little bit better through this call, and just through this conversation, and hopefully we've just entertained people for 45 minutes or an hour.
There you go. Sounds good.
That's all we really want to do. We want to make you laugh and smile and enjoy this life. As Mary Oliver says, you only have one wild and precious life. She says, "What are you going to do with your one wild and precious life?" And I say, go out and live it, because
Absolutely.
and we are so lucky to be alive to do this. So there you
So
go.
let's go do it.
Let's go do it.
Let's go do
All
it.
right. We'll catch all of our listeners next time, and I promise I will have my sister on again. This is the first of many. So I hope you all have a great day, and we will catch you all very soon. Thank you.